Yet another AEW pay-per-view in the books, and I've got to say, this one, Revolution 2023, was pretty damn enjoyable because it had a little bit for everything. It had that ground and pound, non-stop professional wrestling that you want on every show. And yet, for someone like me who loves the sports entertainment aspect of it, the psychology in it, it had a lot of that in it too. A lot of it in the main event of the actual pay-per-view. And the 60-minute Iron Man match that defending and still AEW World Heavyweight Champion Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, defending his title against the American Dragon and Bryan Danielson. That 60-minute Iron Man match was one of the most enjoyable things I have ever watched in recent memory. One of the best Iron Man matches in recent memory as well. And even though the Josh Alexander versus Mike Bailey match on Impact Wrestling wasn't an actual Iron Man match, that did go for about 60 minutes. That was pretty much ground and pound technical wrestling as at its best. Bell-to-bell action. This one with AEW on Revolution, at Revolution actually, for the title, had everything that I wanted it to be, because over the past few months, ever since it was a given that Bryan Danielson and MJF were about to work this program, this feud together, a lot of people were doubting MJF and the fact that he could not go 60 minutes in the middle of the ring, specifically not with Bryan Danielson. But in certain moments of this match, he proved he could go move for move, lock for lock with Bryan Danielson. But not only that, the psychology told in this match. As soon as the bell rang, MJF started stalling. Started baiting Bryan Danielson in, trying to get him to get desperate barely 2 minutes in, 3 minutes in, 5 minutes in the match. And of course that's not going to happen. We're talking about Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon. He chose his stipulation. He knew exactly what he got himself into. And MJF throughout the entirety of the match had to keep going back and drinking water and catching his breath. I love that aspect of it. Because even though MJF can go to 60 minutes, I'm sure of that, his character is salt of the earth. So he's just trying to make a point of it. He's just trying to stall and figure out a way to beat Bryan Danielson at his own game. And as a matter of fact, he did. Because the match went for 30 minutes. And I'm a big fan, I'm a big component of Iron Man matches getting their first fall in late in the match. Because that means that it follows true logistics. But as soon as Bryan Danielson got the very first fall in the match with that Psycho knee, MJF outsmarted the American Dragon. It had been almost 30 minutes, and MJF hadn't been able to pin Bryan Danielson to the mat. And now he's one fall down, so what he does is go low on Bryan Danielson. That costs him a fall, but with that DQ, with that pain in the American Dragon's face, all he does is pin him twice and tie things up 2-2. Now that's something that I personally have never seen in an Iron Man match, and it's something that perfectly fits the MJF character. Furthermore, into the match, MJF realizes that he has to pull out all the stops to beat this guy, especially in this 60-minute Iron Man match. And MJF decides to go and do the thing that he doesn't ever want to do. The high spot, the flippy floppy stuff, he did that. He put Bryan Danielson through a table on ringside. He went high and he reaped the benefits. It gave him a fall, 3-2. And for the first time in this match, MJF was on top. I love that part. Excuse me. And then, I've been talking about this for the past week and a half. We have the best usage of blood, not only in a match, but also story-wise. Bryan Danielson busts MJF open. MJF has a crimson face, a crimson mask on him for the remainder of the match at that point. And Bryan Danielson makes him tap. MJF has to tap 10 minutes before the bell rings, because otherwise he's gonna sustain too much damage. Too much stamina to himself that he might not make it out. And MJF bleeding in that match, in this match, in the later moments of this match is effective as hell. And it all leads to the conclusion of the 60 minutes where we end up tied 3-3, and in an event of a tie, MJF retains the title. But then all of a sudden, we're going to sudden death. One fall to the finish. And these two guys, these two men keep going for 5, 6, 7 more minutes? Until once again, MJF has to resort to his dirty tactics. And quite literally, both literally, figuratively, whatever you want to call it, he uses a tank of oxygen to bust Bryan Danielson in the skull. And that earns him the winning fall to put an end to this match. This match had everything. Bell to bell. In-ring action. Had fantastic storytelling. Fantastic psychology in this match. Something that I might add, sometimes AEW is lacking in when it comes to some of the matches. Most of the matches in AEW are mostly about getting their moves in. You hit a signature move, and normally that should lead to a pinfall, but no, it leads to more moves and more moves and more moves, and just wooing and awing the crowd. And it works sometimes. Most of the times, I get tired of it because it happens throughout the entire show. This main event Iron Man match between MJF and Bryan Danielson did not have any of that. No wasted motion. No wasted movement. Everything that happened in this match, every single part of the story told during this match was effective. You can understand why this particular thing was happening in the match, and I loved it. I loved every single aspect of it, and overall, I love the fact that the result was the correct one. MJF walking out with the AEW World title still in his clutches, still coming out on top, still finding a way to keep that championship at all costs, no matter what. And Bryan Danielson, in my opinion, has now become the Shawn Michaels of AEW. And that's not just because he's one of the best all-around performers in AEW. No. I feel like Bryan Danielson now in AEW has become, and is becoming, the Shawn Michaels of the company, because he's someone you can rely on for a main event program. He is someone you can rely on for a gangbusters main event match. But it's also a matter of Bryan Danielson will not win the World Championship anytime soon. He doesn't need it. He is the American Dragon. He is confident in himself that every single time he goes out to that ring, whether it be Dynamite, Rampage, or any other pay-per-view, he'll put on a show-stealing match, and he doesn't need the world title to prove that he is a main event player in AEW. Overall, fantastic out of both men. Fantastic booking and creative decision from Tony Khan in the main event of Revolution. So, hats off to you all. Everyone involved in this match, obviously. Now we have to get to who I think will become the number one contender to MJF's World Championship at AEW's Double or Nothing in May. And that is the winner of the Texas Death Match. A grueling match. Sometimes watching it back, watching it live, I couldn't keep my eyes on the screen because of how brutal this match turned out to be. Page and Moxley. And again, I've said it in the past, the overusage of blood from Moxley in the weeks leading up to this match, in the weeks leading up to this event at Revolution, I think, and this is just my personal opinion, you don't have to agree with it, obviously, you don't have to be okay with this, but I feel like it took away from the match itself. Because if we hadn't seen Moxley just dripping blood throughout the entire weeks leading up to the pay-per-view, as a matter of fact, Moxley could have bled on the very last appearance that he made before the pay-per-view, and that would have been effective as hell, because that meant that now Moxley was in it for himself to make Page bleed at the pay-per-view. Looking for respect, looking for payback, looking for suffering, looking for Page looking to see if the Hangman can really hang in there with Moxley and bleed in this Texas Death Match. But no, Jon Moxley decided to bleed in a match against Evil Uno. Nothing against Evil Uno, but again, Evil Uno is not Hangman Adam Page. Again, that fork moment, that fork spot in which Moxley took a fork and just stabbed Hangman Adam Page constantly in the forehead would have been a lot more effective had Moxley not bled throughout the entirety of the weeks leading up to this match. That's just me. Overall, again, the results perfectly stated, perfectly put together, in the fact that Hangman walks out with the win and he is firmly positioned to be the next top contender to MJF's World Championship. I mean, he beat Moxley. He beat Moxley within an inch of his life, and he lived to talk about it. He got a 1-2-3 pinfall over Moxley, and that was it. And now MJF, who is still riling, who is still healing from the effects of the Iron Man match, now he has to worry about a former world champion in Hangman Adam Page. Now MJF has to worry about cowboy shit. I feel like that's what we're heading towards with AEW, towards Double or Nothing. I feel like we're going to get the initial stages of that in tonight's episode of Wednesday Night Dynamite, and I can't wait. Not only that, Ricky Starks got the win over Chris Jericho, and I gotta say, the way Ricky Starks handles himself in the middle of that ring, in my opinion, my personal opinion, he carried that match, athletically wise, against Y2J at Revolution. And now, once again, Ricky Starks has proved why he is just one of the best in AEW nowadays. He's fantastic on the mic, great in the ring, charismatic at his best, and he gets the wins that matters. Fortunately, he's already fallen to MJF once before, so it's going to take a while for him to get back up there. But again, Ricky Starks is just somebody who gets it. He gets the professional wrestling industry. And again, I go back to a very simple concept in sports entertainment, which a lot of wrestling fans won't like because they don't like the fact that pro wrestling is sports entertainment. No matter what, they're telling a story. It's scripted. It's not just a sport. It is entertainment. Ricky Starks can tell a story. Ricky Starks can give us his character, give us his promo, put that into a match and really make us care about his character, about his match, about his promo, whatever he's doing. Ricky Starks can do that, and that doesn't come easy. So we'll just have to wait and see what Ricky Starks' next move is in AEW. House of Black, they became the World Trios champions. They had to. Because otherwise, all these threats that they've been making on AEW TV mean nothing. They haven't, up until now, they haven't done anything on AEW TV that's been remotely effective. But now they have the World Trios Championships to prove it, to back them up. And it strengthens that division. It strengthens the gimmicks of the House of Black. And it strengthens Malachi Black because now he has earned gold in AEW. Down the line, when they eventually lose these titles, Malachi Black will be in my opinion, Malachi Black will be a top contender for a mid-card or even the World Championship at some point very near in the future. And it's all because of him and the House of Black winning the World Trios Championship over the Elite. And who knows, we might see Kenny Omega drift back into the world title main event scene. It's been teased on social media over the past few days, so we'll just have to wait and see. Again, another instance of strengthening the tag team division. I called it 2-3 weeks ago. The main reason I believe Tony Khan placed the AEW World Tag Team Championships on the Guns, knowing fully well that the Acclaimed was on top of the world. The Acclaimed was over, one of the most over acts in AEW, and they decided to put the tag team titles on the Guns, who are a great tag team, don't get me wrong, but they weren't over as heels. They weren't as over as heels as they should be in order to take the titles off of the Acclaimed. But now we know why. Because FTR, one of the greatest tag teams in the world today, is back, and they are looking for revenge on the Guns. And who are the tag team champions? The Guns. And what are the tag team titles that FTR hasn't won in the past year, 2 years, in that whole entire run that they had with 3 different tag team titles, the AEW Tag Team Championships? They never could get them. Now, they've got 2 reasons to go after them. The titles themselves and revenge on the Guns. Fantastic again. A fantastically booked pay-per-view all around by Tony Khan. And finally, we've got to talk about the women's division. Ruby Soho finally picked a side. And again, I had my concerns about this leading into the pay-per-view. Because this triple threat, this 3-way match between Ruby Soho, Jamie Hayter, and Saraya, it felt like it wasn't about the AEW Women's World Championship. It was more about picking sides. The AEW Women's Originals or the, for lack of a better term, former WWE superstars. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. The match, that was alright. Triple threat match, women's division match, was alright. Again, it should have been more important. It should have had more value. We're talking about the top title in the women's division, the AEW Women's World Championship. Jamie Hayter is on top of the world, and yet you want to focus on Ruby Soho and all these other women picking sides. I think that was one misstep in this entire pay-per-view for Tony Khan. But again, this is something that we knew leading up into the pay-per-view. Every time these 3 women would show up on Dynamite or on Rampage, it's not really about the Women's World Championship, even though the commentators plugged it. Even though Ruby Soho motioned to her waist that she wanted to be the Women's World Champion. At the end of it all, the headline coming out of this match at Revolution, it isn't Jamie Hayter retains the AEW Women's World Championship once again. and proves why she is on top of the women's division in AEW. No, the headline is Ruby Soho picked a side and she joined the team that she was always meant to join. The former WWE superstar group in Saraya and Toni Storm. So now the scales are tilted in the favor of the group in the former WWE superstars with Saraya, with Toni Storm, with Ruby Soho. So now who's coming back or who's joining Britt Baker, DMD, and the Women's World Champion Jamie Hayter in this battle for the women's division? That is the story coming out of Revolution, for the women's division at least. That's the way how I see it. You might have a different opinion. If you do, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. Overall, a pretty enjoyable pay-per-view, a pretty tight pay-per-view. I believe there was only 7 or 8 matches in the entire pay-per-view card, clocked in at about 4.5 hours. Again, thoroughly enjoyable pay-per-view. I think this is the way that they should be booking, that this is the way Tony Khan should be booking his pay-per-views going forward. Just match after match after match after match, keeping it tight, keeping it to the point. Again, I think AEW still have to work on letting things simmer for a little bit, letting things stick before they go on to the next segment. I think that's something that they still have to work with. But overall, Revolution, an enjoyable experience, a fantastic pay-per-view, and I can't wait for Double or Nothing later on in May for this year. So with that said, that was what transpired at Revolution. We have Dynamite later on tonight. Looking forward to news stories building up for 2023 in AEW, and we're about to check that out tonight on TBS, so make sure you tune in for that. I'm Alexis Carrillo. This has been Wrestling Talk, and I'll see you next time.